Hey guys, what's up and welcome back to my channel. I'm doing my July reading wrap up today and I am excited and also not excited for this video just because July is over and I go back to school in like 2-ish weeks and I'm not ready. But I am excited to be sharing with you all the books that I read in the month of July. So I kind of like read a lot in July. I feel like I read a really good amount. I have written down on my like reading journal more books than I finished because I thought that I was gonna finish books and then I didn't finish them. So I read 9 books in the month of July and I didn't have a set TBR for the month of July. I am gonna pick one for August, but I didn't have a set one for July, so I just kind of read whatever I felt like reading. I wrote down some stuff that I wanted to get done and read this month for videos, and I did most of it except for one video, which I can't tell you because you will see it later and I don't want to spoil it. So let's get into just some kind of like analytical stuff, I guess you could say. Out of the 9 books that I read, 5 of them were YA, 4 of them were romance, and 1 of them was a graphic novel. And this month I had 3 5-star reads, which is a very good month for me. So let's just get right into the books I read. The first book that I read in the month of July was Divergent by Veronica Roth. This was kind of a reread for me. I know I read it at some point, but I didn't have any recollection of reading this, so I wanted to read it. I was gonna do a reading vlog of this, and you might see it, you might not, but I was working on it, and then I was like, I don't know if people want to see this, so I don't know. But I did annotate these books. I don't know if you can tell, but yeah, there we go. The tabs really match like the titles. And the entire time that I was reading this book, I was comparing it to the movies, and I loved this book because I really loved the movies my whole life, and I kind of think that, and this is gonna be horrible because everyone knows the books are always better than the movies, but I kind of feel like the movies are better than these books, and it's not to say like these books are bad because they're definitely not. I gave this book specifically a 4.5, but I don't know, I just think like they took a lot of information out of this and they also just made 4 so much more gruffly. I don't know what's the word. I don't know what the word is. Like, he's meaner in the movies. It's giving more like, I'm your instructor, don't talk to me, don't even like look at me. I don't know. The movies for me were giving more of like, also more adult vibes, which makes sense because like the actors are adults, but the movie was just giving more of like 4 being like not the nicest guy. And I feel like in this book, like he was kind of nice, and I know he wasn't supposed to be, but he was. Like he was kind of really nice to Tris, and I don't know. I think that's why I didn't give it a 5, because it was so different from the movies, and I'd like really grown up on the movies and grown up accustomed to them and the kind of like stuff that's in them, that I feel like this was just kind of like not hitting the same, but it was still hitting, like it was still a good book. The next book that I read was Beach Read by Emily Henry, and I loved this book. I gave this a 5-star. I give probably every book that Emily Henry writes a 5-star, and I know that this is a 5-star book. I talked about this, I think, in my mid-year book tag, that I really loved this book, but I kind of read it as like 2 halves. I read half of it like at the end of June, and then I read the other half in the very beginning of July, and I feel like this book was, the 2 halves were really good, but I kind of stopped at a part where it was like half the book, so it kind of like separated the 2, and I know that this book is a 5-star book, that's why I gave it 5 stars, but it was just like, I didn't get the story as a whole the way that I should have, so I want to reread this soon, which is also what I said in my mid-year book tag, because I know that this book is a 5-star, like the writing, phenomenal, love Emily Henry, I loved the characters, I loved the story, I just really loved this book, but it just wasn't hitting that way for me. It wasn't like a 6-star book. Like Emily Henry's books are usually 6-star book, but I definitely want to reread this and maybe see if I can like read it faster and not stop in between, because I was also reading other stuff in between this. Like, it was just hard for me to like pick this book back up. Not that it was bad, just because like I was just kind of like, I was reading other stuff for videos. Like it was just one of those things where I was just not inclined to pick this up, and I don't know. It's hard to say all of that and then also say that it was a 5-star book, because I did really love this, but I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy for rating it 5 stars, but I know it's a 5-star book. It's so good. The next book that I read was Not in Love by Ali Hazelwood. This is a new-ish release, newer. It was very new when I read it, and I didn't love this book, unfortunately. I feel like it was just missing for me, which is hard to say because I kind of went into this thinking that I wasn't gonna like it because I've heard that this is more erotic than her other books, and I'm not really into that, and it definitely was, and that was a little bit scary for me. But I still really liked the story and like what was going on in this book. It was about Rue and Eli, who were like enemies to lovers. They kind of like hooked up before they even knew each other, and then they came together in like a workplace rivalry, and I really liked that. I really enjoyed it, but I think that the other things in the book were just too prominent for me, and if that's something that you're into, like, this is the book for you, because I love Ali Hazelwood so much. And so that's why I kind of feel bad for giving this. I gave this a 2.5, and I kind of feel really bad for it because I love Ali Hazelwood and I usually really love her books, but I think just this one just wasn't my cup of tea, which I think isn't the end of the world, and I feel like I knew that going into it, but I still love Ali Hazelwood, so I still wanted to read the book and see kind of like how this story unfolded, and I really loved the story. I just wish that it wasn't the kind of book that it was, and that's just like a me problem. It's not like the book's problem. So if you're into that, go read this book. I would definitely recommend it because it is still very, very good, but just not my cup of tea, so I did give it a 2.5, but I still really loved the book. I feel like I'm like really contradicting myself today, but. And the next book that I read was Novel Love Story by Ashley Poston. This was also a new release, new when I read it, definitely. And I loved this book so much. This was so good. It wasn't better than 7 Years Slip for me, but it was definitely like a close second. I just love Ashley Poston's like writing. I think that the way she writes is very poetically beautiful, and I think it's very just easy to read, but also very like deep and meaningful, and I love that so much. Like, I think she just really hits the mark with these books. I gave this one a 4.75. I think the 0.25 off was just kind of like a me feeling. I was just like not feeling the book, but I think that some of the details in this book I think were like a little bit out there, and it was just one of those books where like it was really, really good, but it was just, I don't know, it wasn't a 5-star for me. It was very, very close, but it just wasn't a 5-star for me. I think that just there was something that happened towards the end, and it was, I guess, like a third act breakup, and I just didn't like it. So I think that's probably why I gave it a 4.75, because those third act breakups really hit me. I think that they definitely have to be done in a certain way to the point where it's like not too upsetting, and I feel like this one was really upsetting, but I kind of understand. The more I think about it, the more I'm like, I understand what the reasoning was, and I understand why that was a plot point and why that was like the third act breakup, but I don't know. I gave this one a 4.75. I still really loved it, and I would definitely recommend it, so go read this if you haven't already, because I loved this book. And then the next book was Insurgent by Veronica Roth. This is the second book in the Divergent series. Trilogy? There's a fourth book, which is just called Four, and it's like a series of novellas, so I would call this a trilogy, but there's also a fourth book. But I also annotated this one, and it matches perfectly. I didn't love this one as much. I gave it a 3.5. I think this book definitely had like middle book syndrome, where it was just kind of a lot of, not a lot of nothing, but it was just kind of a lot of nothing. Like, it was a lot of character interactions, and I wish that it was giving more than what it was actually giving. I think that the movie definitely did this book justice and kind of like omitted all of those character interactions that were just like unimportant, I felt, to the story. Like, some people that you had like just met that she was having a lot of character interactions with, and then like I feel like they could have just been not in this book, and I would have loved the book so much more, because this is a really long book. It's like 530 pages, and I think it definitely could have been less, which I feel like I rarely ever say about a book, is that like I could just use less. But I definitely could have used less of like just things and like conversations between people that I felt were just like unimportant, and I felt like didn't really move the story along at all, were just kind of there, and some of it was just kind of unnecessary, definitely, and I think that's probably why I gave it a 3.5. Okay, and the next book that I read, which I don't have, but I do think I want to get these books because I have loved all of them, is Heartstopper Volume 2 by Alice Oseman. Loved this book. gave it a 5. It was very good. This one was obviously the second book in the Heartstopper series, and it was very good. It's a graphic novel. That's the one graphic novel that I said that I read, and I loved it. I know I keep saying that, but these books are just very like short and sweet, easy to read, and they're good kind of like palate cleanser books, I guess, and I just get really excited when I can like sit down and read one. I've been reading them on my phone, and I really want like a physical copy, and I've also wanted to get into graphic novels for a while because I think they're just good. Like, they're very sweet and cute usually. I don't know. I just ordered one, and hopefully you will see that in my August wrap up because I have been really wanting to read it. But yeah. And then the last 3 books that I read were all a part of the same series, and that was the first 3 books in the Shatter Me series. This is like the original trilogy and not like the second trilogy, I guess. I don't have any of the novellas. I really want to get them, but I don't know. I just like can't see myself paying the same price for like this book that I would pay for like a little novella. So I'm gonna try and get them on like Amazon or maybe like a secondhand bookstore, because I feel like, I don't know, it's just a lot to pay for like 2 little stories, and they're very thin. They're like this big. But yeah, I did read the first 3 books in the series, and these were definitely rereads for me, and I'm really upset because I ordered new tabs. I will show them to you. Wait. I feel like these are like the book tabs that everyone orders off of Amazon when they want to get into like annotating books. They just have so many colors, and they're kind of just like cheap, so if you don't use them, it's not like you've paid like a lot of money for these kind of like cheap tabs. And I'm kind of upset because I definitely wanted to annotate these books, but I just didn't have tabs for them. So yeah, I ordered this like whole bunch of tabs. Like, look how thick that is. And because they didn't come in until I was halfway through this book, the second book, I couldn't annotate these books because I didn't have tabs for them, and I was kind of upset, but I'm definitely going to reread them again sometime, maybe next year, beginning of next year, later this year even. I don't know, just whenever I'm in the mood for, because I really love these books. Love them so, so much. This one was a 4.75 for me, not a 5, just because it was just very YA. I don't know. I think that when I first rated these, this was like a 6-star series for me, and it still is. And I probably just rated all these books 5s on Goodreads, but I kind of took my time when I was reading this to think about what I wanted to rate it, because I feel like I just read them really fast the first time that I read them, so I wanted to like take my time and think about this book because I do really love this series, and this was a 4.75 for me. I love the characters. I don't want to spoil it, because there is like a, I'm not gonna tell you because I don't want to spoil it, and if you've never read this, I want this to be like going in blind. And then this book, Unravel Me, is the second book. These are all by, I apologize for saying this wrong, but these are all by, oh, I just threw it on the ground. Okay, anyway, I apologize if I say this wrong, but these are all by Tahereh Mafi, I think is how you say that. Tahereh Mafi. This one was definitely giving middle book syndrome. It was kind of just a lot of filler. I think that the first book was so good, and it was just like a perfect setup to like this series, and then the last book was this perfect like ending to the series, because the original trilogy came out and then like the other 3 came out, and I think like the last book was the perfect ending to the original trilogy, and there was just so much happening in the third book, and I think that there's definitely a lot happening in this book. You get a lot of really good character interactions, and the characters build up a lot of like really crucial relationships for the rest of these books, but I just think there was a lot of like unnecessary drama in this, and I just kind of hated Adam in this, and I also kind of hated Juliet in this. I think that the 2 of them were just being very selfish and very childish, and especially Juliet. I didn't like her in this book, and I can still say that I really, really love her as a character, and I love these books, but I didn't like Juliet in this one, and this was definitely giving like middle book syndrome, but it was giving middle book syndrome with a plot, if that makes sense. And then the very last book in July that I read was Ignite Me, and I gave this a 5. Love this. I would give it 6 stars if I could. This is such a good book. I kind of match it. Anyway. It is like the same color as my shirt. That's weird. Anyway, I love this book so much. This is so good. I love the characters in this book. I love the relationship in this book. I love how funny this book is. All of these books are funny, but I think there was definitely like a lot of like heavy stuff happening in this book, whereas this one was a little bit more lighthearted. It definitely wasn't more lighthearted, but I feel like the funny characters were really being funny in this book, and it was just like, I found myself like laughing out loud at this book. Like, I love this series, and I'm definitely gonna read the other 3 in August, so hopefully they will be in my August wrap up, and maybe I will get the novellas by then. Okay. So, we have wrapped up this wrap up. I hope you guys enjoyed me talking about all the 9 books that I read this month. I'm trying to read more. I feel like 8 books is like a good goal. Usually when I'm picking like a TBR, I only pick 6, so this was a really good month for me, and I'm very proud of this month. But I have been like trying to read more and trying to like get back on my reading grind, but I've been in kind of like a little bit of a weird slump this month, but it doesn't show, which is odd. I think my slump was when I was reading Heartstopper, so that kind of like got me out of it. I don't know, but I hope you guys enjoyed watching me talk about all the books I read in July. Like, I always say this in these videos, but I definitely want you to comment if you've read any of these books, if you want to read any of these books, if you have any book recommendations for me, because I love getting book recommendations. But anyway, with all that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye! Mwah!